Another day, another spying attempt by China. A House Homeland Security Committee investigation finding Chinese-made cargo cranes at ports nationwide pose an espionage risk to the United States. The cellular modems on the cranes could allow Beijing to collect information and bypass firewalls, potentially disrupt port operations. The probe also found that Chinese crane manufacturer ZPMC has pressured port operators to allow them to maintain remote access. Now, this comes as an ex-CIA officer has been charged with spying for China and sentenced to 10 years in prison. And then here in New York City Police Commissioner Edward Caban resigning after an investigation that includes suspicions of Caban having ties to China. His resignation coming after one of his top aides was accused of being chairman of a nonprofit group meant to spread Chinese propaganda. And then there was this. Just last week, longtime former aide to former Governor Andrew Cuomo, former chief of staff to Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, Linda Sun. She was charged with being an acting agent of the CCP. A lot has been happening here. Let's bring in Hudson Institute senior fellow, Atlas Organization founder, and author of The Decisive Decade, Jonathan D.T. Jonathan, I want to go back to this port issue, because this after the balloon that flew across the United States that the Biden administration finally shot down, worries about our national, our security facilities, Los Alamos. I mean, the list goes on and on of how the Chinese have tried to infiltrate and spy on our country, and they're not stopping.
No, they're not at all, Cheryl. And, the concerns over these ports and cranes specifically, ship-to-shore cranes. ZPMC is the company that is a subsidiary of one of China's major state-owned SASAC corporations, China Communications Construction Corporation, which is directly owned by the Communist Party of China, deployed in 140 countries worldwide with over 200 overseas branches. So we're dealing directly with the Chinese state. CCC, which is China Communications Construction Corporation, is also the company that built the military islands in the South China Sea. So you really have this situation where, this is what happens when you lose your ability to compete in manufacturing and industrial goods. So we had this something come out from the American Association of Port Authorities in their comments on the proposed changes to the Section 301 tariffs, where they said it is unlikely that any manufacturers could produce American-made ship-to-shore cranes with the necessary reliability, durability, and specifications to support our seaports within the next several years. So, I mean, again, this speaks to a wide variety of problems. It's China's sort of ascent, in so many of the major strategic industries. It's America's inability to keep up with this. I mean, we have to get back into the game of industry and manufacturing and all the rest of it. And of course, the CCP is going to weaponize all of this. Yeah. I mean, they are preparing for war with the U.S. in the Pacific. So, the DIA and a whole bunch of national security leaders have been telling us for a long time, these cranes are no good. Beijing could throttle, shipping from the West Coast into the Pacific, and they could also, obviously collect intelligence.
And I'm going to get to the military part of that in a second, but I do want to ask you about another business story here that's been happening. These are American companies that operate in China. They're seeing record low profits. This is this new report by the American Chamber of Commerce out of Shanghai. Out of 306 companies surveyed, only 47% of respondents have any optimistic outlook on their business in China for the next 5 years. U.S. foreign direct investment into China dropped 14% last year to $163 billion. All of this because of, the slowing Chinese economy, but also these tensions between our two countries. And then China, we're now learning, just detained at least 3 top investment bankers in a corruption sweep, Jonathan.
Right. So, look, I think the party is ending for American corporates in China. I mean, they've been there for a long time. They've built supply chains there that I think are fundamentally at risk because of geopolitics, and also the profitability of these corporations is relatively limited. I mean, China, as somebody wisely put it to me recently, is simply not a consumer market when it comes to what, our corporates are looking for. So I think the prospects of growth, I mean, given that they have just this persistent lack of consumer demand and thus their own overcapacity, what I've told my corporate clients over all the years is when you're in China, you're not really selling your product, you're selling your intellectual property. That's really how this works.
Yeah.
You go in there, they steal everything. Every chief security officer I know in the Fortune 500 has told me this repeatedly, and it's sort of commonly understood, I think. But boards and CEOs need to understand you want to be looking for the exit now so that you don't lose a limb as U.S.-China decoupling gets underway and as the geopolitics really get a lot more serious than they are even now. I mean, this is going to get more serious, not less serious.
I agree.
And as to the capital markets, pressure on investment bankers, I mean, Xi Jinping has basically taken his anti-corruption crackdown into the financial sector. I mean, they see that as linked to the housing crisis, to Evergrande, all the rest of it. But they're going to kill off their own capital markets if they keep this up. I mean, we've already seen VC fundraising dry up. I mean, IPOs have collapsed, essentially. This pressure on salaries in the investment banking sector, and the fact that most of China's real significant financial institutions are still state-owned, meaning party-owned. And then we go back to the sort of corporate picture where you take companies like China Communications Construction Corporation, which is on the Fortune Global 100, but it only runs about a 1% profitability. So these are not profitable companies. China's banking sector is, I think, going to come under increasing pressure.
Yeah.
And this is all
Jonathan.
good geopolitically, by the way.
Well, all right. So real quick, I've only got like a minute left with you, but I got to ask you about this. SEAL Team 6, that's the unit that killed Osama bin Laden. Reportedly, they're preparing for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, and they've been working on this for more than a year. This is the report. Really quick, I want to get your reaction to this.
Yeah, well, look, I think it just reminds us of how absolutely real and serious this is. At this point, our entire military is very focused on China. Xi Jinping is very focused on Taiwan and the whole First Island chain. And, we have to get our deterrence together. We have to execute a real U.S. military buildup together with our allies so that there is never a good day for Xi Jinping to fight a war against America. We have to get serious and we have to get fast.
Jonathan D.T. Ward, it's always great to have you on this topic. Thank you very much for being here.